Hey, what's good, everybody? Welcome to another Hype Live session. This is one of my bucket list interviews. Fanboy moment over. We're going to get right to it because this is a very busy lady. Today, we're joined by one of the most trusted voices in American journalism. Her name is Soledad O'Brien. She's an award-winning journalist. I can't count how many Peabodys and Emmys she has for her work. She's a filmmaker and media entrepreneur whose work has consistently pushed journalism to be more accountable, more human, and more honest. Uh,
I'm
from
just going to
land.
listen and just keep going for this entire interview. I'm just going to be like, thank you. Thank you. Thank
You
you.
do wonders for my ego. You do wonders for my ego.
I
Look,
love it. Thank you. You're too kind, truly.
from landmark projects like Black in America, Latino in America, to her currently Oscar nominated documentary films The Perfect Neighbor and The Devil is Busy. The Devil is Busy you can find on streaming on HBO Max right now. The Perfect Neighbor is one that we haven't heard as much about, but I just got to tell you, both of these stories are
Yeah, they're
poignant.
hardcore, huh? They're hardcore. It's so
They're,
interesting because sometimes I feel like my entire life in journalism, and not in a bad way, has just been about tackling really intense stuff. And every so often, we're just like, God, shouldn't we just do something fun and easy? But it is interesting to be able to work on projects around For Perfect Neighbor, Stand Your Ground Law in Ocala, Florida, and For The Devil is Busy, which is our short that airs on HBO, to look at what's happening at an abortion clinic through the eyes of the woman who's the security guard there now. X number of years past end of Roe v. Wade. So, both of those are seriously tough topics to try to cover, but I think they're really important. And I never want people to say like, "Oh, well, who wants to cover that? Who's interested in that?" Because they're important stories.
yeah, sidebar, this morning I responded to a political journalist who says, who wants to keep covering politics and history and bringing it up. I said, with the erasure, the purposeful erasure of our stories, it's more important now
Yeah.
to remember, not to dwell, but to remember and make sure that the truth is told. That's
Yeah.
integrity in journalism. The
Yeah.
Perfect
Agreed
Neighbor
again.
was the cold one for me. I'll be honest, reading the synopsis, about a G.K. Owens in Florida who was, the politically correct term is killed, but I say murdered. Being a former warrior myself, you don't do things to people that don't deserve it. I'll just say that. And so I love it that it uses body cam footage and community testimony to examine, issues of race, gun violence, and accountability in
Yeah.
America.
Yeah. We have a really amazing team that we work with. Gita Gandabir is a phenomenal director, and her team at Message Pictures were our partners in this, Sam Bisbee as well at Park Pictures. And we all kind of got together to help this thing get across the finish line. But it's such an important story. What's interesting too, as a reporter, most of the stories that you tell about stand your ground cases, right? You show up after the fact, right? You say, this happened here, and he was walking from there to there, and this happened here. But when you have body cam, which Gita, who in her past lives has been an editor, strung together, because think about it, right? On many of these occasions over a couple of years, multiple police officers would show up at a location, and then the editor has to piece together which camera is with the other partner, right? And then
Right.
where does it fit into the timeline? So it was, just incredible and amazing work that she did. Very Deanna Leitenthal is uh, our editor on that project as well, and just fantastic. So I think we were just so lucky to work with really amazing, amazing people. It turned out that the woman, Ajika, who was killed by her neighbor, shot through a locked door by her neighbor, who then would later claim, I feared for my life. Um, uh, her mom really was very interested in making sure that her story was told. Was very felt like in a way, her daughter showing her daughter's body, which happens in the film. She was like, it's a little bit similar to Emmett Till, right? Where if you're going to talk about a murder, if you're going to talk about an unjustified murder, then you have to show it.
Right.
And it turns out for our director, Geeta, she was very close. Her family was close friends with Ajika's family, so it was really a very personal story for her to come in to direct from the very beginning.
I would like to point out what we're talking about, Geeta, that she has the distinction this year at the 98th Academy Awards of being the only director nominated for two films.
Yeah, and
She
also our director along, so Geeta and Crystalline Hampton were the directors together on our project, The Devil is Busy, which is on HBO. And Crystalline Hampton and Ryan Coogler are the only two African American directors nominated this year, which I think is, I mean, that's pretty great company to be in. I'd be next to Ryan Coogler in all the pictures.
Hey, I'm not mad at you. I would too. His story is amazing. So congratulations, obviously, for having. We have a black woman who has two Oscar nominations in documentary film. One's a short. The new one, Perfect Neighbor, is a full feature
Yeah,
documentary film.
correct.
So two different categories. Just amazing. I can't speak to the historical significance of
Yeah,
this
it's
documentary.
huge, and Geeta is well known in the doc world and has been doing. I mean, she used to be an editor for Spike Lee, so she's in fact she also has another film out right now, or it really came out on the anniversary of Katrina, which I am in, which is called Hell or High Water, which is Spike Lee's multi-part series about 20 years after Katrina. So, she's got a lot going on at this very moment. We have another project coming out next month on PBS, which takes a look at six remarkable women, underwritten by a friend of mine who passed away at a very young age, but who had been spent her lifetime as a reporter telling the stories of women in business. And I sometimes have to remind the younger reporters, like in the 80s and the 90s, that was not a thing.
Right.
Like nobody was like, find us interesting women in business to profile. And so her name is Felicia Taylor, and the series that we're doing for PBS is called She Was First. Misty Copeland, for example, is one of the women we profile in our doc series. So Geeta, again, part of that, Crystalline, again, part of that project. And so, it's been fun because I think one of the things that I've joined a group of people who are very good about mentoring and growing people together, which I have always really appreciated. Geeta's amazing at that. Crystalline is great at that. So Crystalline is the showrunner for us, was the director on this other project, had done another project. You just keep working with people in a different capacity. And I think Geeta has been very intentional about helping people grow in this industry. And so I've really have, a lot of people talk a good game about being a mentor. I think I'm a pretty good mentor. I'm like, you go, girl. I got you. I'll give you, I'll speak into you words of wisdom.
Mhm.
Geeta finds people jobs, then make sure they're successful in that job, and then make sure that they move up to the next job and the next job. So this documentary, The Devil is Busy, is Crystalline's first directing project, and she's
Wow.
nominated for an Oscar. That's amazing.
Wow.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's
Wow.
so cool. It's so cool. So what a great joy to work with such talented people.
No gatekeeping, no crabs in the bucket going on here. This is the example, the manifestation of everything we talk about um, in community, especially within journalism and black journalism. While they try to keep us out of tier one, can't do it when we have leaders such as yourself. You're someone whom I would gladly sit at your feet and learn how to be, a better storyteller, to see deeper. These are the things. So, you've navigated broadcast news, long form documentaries, and independent production. What did gaining ownership of your work change for your creativity and journalistically?
When I was leaving CNN, my last week, we had done Black in America, Latino in America, Gay in America, Education in America. I did not name them because I feel like I would have been a little more creative.
Hmm.
But I was really interested in doing a project around poverty. This was a time, it was now 13 years ago, where there were so many people in poverty who had full-time jobs. This idea that like poor people are just sitting around, they don't, it just wasn't true. And there was a story actually about a guy who was working, I think, in the halls of Congress, and he was living in his car because he could not afford housing in DC. It's a very typical story, even now more than it was 13 years ago.
Mm.
And I went to my boss and I said, um, I really think it'd be interesting to do a project, Poverty in America. And he said, ooh, who would want to look at that?
Mm.
And I remember thinking, like, this is a person who really genuinely doesn't understand, right? This is, I don't, what does he think? Like, it's hobos riding the rail with a little, stick and a little packet of, I mean, it's crazy because it's actually the people next to you. You have no idea who's in poverty. You have no idea to what degree the people who you actually employ, right, are juggling so much stuff that maybe they don't even have a home and they're crashing on a friend's couch. So I just remember thinking, like, yeah, it's really time for me to go. It's hard to have your own thing. We have to find buyers, and so it's not like I just every morning wake up and say, let's just do this and we go ahead. But I think if you can think of interesting projects and then find buyers for your ideas, you really get to work on the things you really care about, and not work on things that you feel like you're not adding value. My whole entire time at NBC and at CNN, I always felt like I would like to be adding value. I'd like to be needed on this story. And that
Mm.
was kind of how I gauged whether or not I was going to go.
The story you just told was that like was that a benchmark moment for you when you knew like traditional news structures could no
Yeah,
longer fully support the stories you wanted to tell?
I think for most people of color in newsrooms, it just happens so often, right? You just get, no one cares about that story. No one's interested in that. Focus groups don't care. Black people don't care who's anchoring the show. But, I mean, all these are all things that I have heard. So for me, it was the 99th thing, but it made you realize, like, you know what? It's just time to move on, because anybody who doesn't see, I just knew that he was so far.
Mm.
There's a lot of people I think, who hate poor people.
Mm.
And a lot of people in journalism who hate poor people, and that who they want to be doing stories for are well-off people, upper middle class people who I think we should do stories for everybody, though everybody. And so, when it comes to telling stories about poor people or minorities or people who are kind of on the margins, it just not interested in it.
Mm.
And I've always found that very disheartening.
It's, I mean, it just makes sense that your documentaries often sit like at the intersection of empathy and accountability. You know, how do you balance like the emotional storytelling with journalistic rigor? I have
You
caught
know,
myself trembling in the middle of.
Oh, yeah. It was actually a lot harder when we would cover. I mean, I don't cover breaking news anymore. And so sometimes that's really, really hard. But I remember covering the tsunami in Southeast Asia. I was sent to Thailand, and it was just death at every turn. People who had lost toddlers because they'd gotten washed away. I mean, it was so heartbreaking all the time. And so I think, like, for me, my strategy has always been, you're not the story. And if you make yourself the story, you're not actually helping anybody. And if you fall apart, you're not really doing your job. And if you cry and you make a scene, like, you're just not really being helpful. And that's not what we're there for. We're there to help people try to find each other and update the people who are watching at home and explain very clearly. So you've never been to this part of Thailand. Here's what it's like. Here's what happened. Here's where the water came in. Here's where people, that was my job. And so I think I've always been tried to be very good at, like, um just removing myself emotionally from it, and but also allowing myself to be emotional. I mean, if you're seeing children dying, of course you're emotional. If you're in Hurricane Katrina, if you're watching people are stuck on roofs and you can't be helpful to them, like, I mean, obviously, like, what kind of a horrible person isn't moved by that? So I always think that, it's okay to be, and this advice I give younger journalists, you can be yourself, you can be emotional, but don't get to the point where you're so distracting that you're not helping anybody. That's just not really useful.
You have to kind of cultivate disassociative disorder when you're telling these kind of stories. You have to flip the switch off in order to get the who, what, when, where, why out.
I don't think about it that way. I think about it as take in everything and then just make sure what you're delivering is worthy of your audience and worthy of the people whose story you're telling. And
Mm,
it never comes down to here's how I feel and oh my gosh, and I'm upset and I'm sad and I'm crying. It never is. It just isn't. That's not for, I always go home back to my home that's fine and my kids who are fine and
I understand.
so I just try to remember that like I'm just the conduit.
Mm, I like it. What signals for you that a story deserves like a full depth documentary rather than a traditional news segment? Anything special?
Um, a lot of times it's what's the video? How are you going to tell this story? There are a lot of good stories that are great, but they should be a podcast because there's no video.
Mm,
Um, or they should be a book because there's no video. So I think, for example, in Perfect Neighbor, when the lawyers got access to all this video, suddenly for Gita, and she has said this in interviews, I'm just paraphrasing her, that she sort of understood that she could now create the story like a thriller because we could see it unfold years in advance. You never really get that chance. Usually you're looking back retrospectively. And in this case, you got to see all the foreshadowing that everybody was kind of seeing but didn't realize they were seeing. So I think a lot of it is just video, a good story, video access, who do you have the people who are the ones who need to talk? Or, it can't just be people who are close to the story. It needs to be people who are in the story.
mm,
So I think all of those things have to come together for a documentary in much more of a way than when I was doing daily news pieces where, basically you needed a minute 15, a minute 30. And so you just needed, what you required was a lot less, in terms of just content.
mm. Sticking with the perfect neighbor, um, this may seem like a really layman's question. I'm going to ask it anyway. What compelled you to become involved in the perfect neighbor, and what responsibility might you have felt in helping shape this narrative?
So as I said, the woman who died was basically like a family member to Gita's family. And so we have done a lot of projects with her. And when she was, sort of trying to figure out like, okay, what do you, but she's like, I do films. When something happens, I'm a filmmaker. We do, you do a film. And so we were able to help by sending, our crew down to start shooting immediately. But we've done a lot of work with her, so I think a lot of it is just being supportive and helpful in any way that help was needed. She's got a fantastic team.
Mm,
Um, and I think it's really one of the things I've liked about documentary is that people are constantly like bouncing stuff off each other. Hey, I'm thinking about structuring it this way. Hey, I'm thinking about, in TV news again, you have a minute 30. You don't have so much choice about
mm.
what you're going to do next. So I have really enjoyed that.
As this film receives its Oscar recognition, what conversations do you hope it forces the public to confront?
I've done, I'd say, a handful of stories on Stand Your Ground. Trayvon Martin was one. There's been others.
Mm,
And I don't know that everybody really understood how what happens and the degree to which people of color are usually the victim, that disproportionately impacted by these stand your ground laws. It was probably the first time watching the film when I thought, like, now people will understand stand your ground because they've seen the 2 years of this thing unfold.
right.
Then you see a murder, and then you see a case where the woman's like, "Oh no, I feared for my life, so I shot through a locked door." And I think it really, I think there's so many people who've seen it. It's done very well on Netflix and really understand, like, oh, I get what Stand Your Ground is about in a way that I'm not sure people fully understood it, even in a very famous case like Trayvon Martin's case.
Okay. We're, in a swirling dervish
Mhm.
kind of thing of media and power and accountability, and journalists are failing to meet the mark. How do you
Yeah.
view the role of journalists in this era where misinformation spreads faster than verified?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really tough time because I can be very critical, but at the same time, journalists are being unfunded and fired. Journalists of color are being disproportionately let go from their jobs. So, it's just a really tough time in journalism. I think there are some people out there who are doing great work, but I think a lot of people are not. And I have found that very disheartening. Sorry, that's my dog. You see my
No,
dog running.
I saw the
He
tail
hears he
earlier
hears his
flagging. I was like,
sister
hey.
barking, and he's like, "I'm out. I got to go check it out." So it's been very disheartening. It's been very disheartening. But I do think, like most things, it all goes like this, right? There are highs and lows and highs and lows. And so, I'm hopeful that I love journalism and I love talking to young journalists, and I feel like they're really smart and really good. So I'm very hopeful about what's coming down the pike. But at this moment, and it's not just journalism, right? It's just like right now, everything is pretty terrible. And it's very hard for people. A lot of people are reluctant to call power into question.
Okay.
Sorry, plane over my head. I hope I'm not, no,
No,
the
I didn't
noise.
hear it.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so I think and I think there's a lot of cowardly bosses who don't want to take a stand and just want to hang on to their jobs. So all of those things I think add up to a very challenging situation.
And the cowardly lawyers who are advising those bosses
Yeah.
who are, Anyway, so I guess we agree that, public trust in journalism has significantly changed how we have to approach interviews and storytelling today.
But at the same exact time, there are so many journalists, it's just taken so long, right? Who were breaking the Epstein story, for example. There was a woman at the Miami Herald who has been on this story forever, forever. And, just now, and she's a fantastic journalist, and there are others too. So I really feel like there are people doing very good work. The environment's a really challenging one.
Okay. Women, leadership, and legacy. As a woman who built an independent media company, 2013 you started Starfish, and now it's
Yeah.
evolved to Soledad O'Brien Productions. What lessons were never taught in the newsrooms, but proved essential later?
Oh my God, you have 17 more hours for this
I
podcast.
have all the time in the world
Well,
for you.
what's funny? I tell people all the time, like, if learn accounting. I had never run a budget before. Started running a company, and it's hard. I really Gita gives great advice, and I think I would take this on as well for people running production companies, which is she always says for people who want to be documentarians, like go work on docs, your friend's doc, go work on it, do the second AP, roll the cables out for whatever, like just go and work on it and you'll learn so much. And I would say for running a company, that's very similar, right? Go and be in someone's company and understand like how it works. I remember we were looking for our office space, and I would just look and be like, someone would say, how many square feet do you need? And I was like, I don't know. I have no idea. I just, I'd never had to buy like, and the only employee I'd ever had was my assistant. I didn't even really report to me, right? Reported to CNN. So it was just hard. It was like a very steep learning curve, but it took about 18 months before I really kind of figured it out. And I'd never have had any shame about um, asking questions and asking for advice. So I think that has helped because I'm always like, listen, I don't know what I'm doing here. Can you help? So it took a solid 18 months before I felt like, okay, this is my company. This is what I want to be doing. These are the people I want to work with. Someone gave me, a friend of my husband's gave me good advice. He said, fire fast. And I think that's very hard to do, but it was really good advice, because I was not a fast firer. And I do think like moving people on out of where they're not good and moving them into something else or moving them off is really smart.
Okay.
That was very helpful advice.
So, staying in that vein, really quickly, and thank you for your patience, and I appreciate you. What do you hope emerging journalists, I think you may have already said it, but what do you hope they learn from your career path
Mm.
beyond the awards and visibility?
I think one thing that my career has shown is just tenacity. It's just staying in it to just keep going. That people would say, oh, I remember when I left the Today Show to go to CNN, and people were like, oh my God, who leaves the Today Show? Nobody. And I was able to really build a career there. And I think some of my best work was done there. When I was leaving CNN, I remember people saying, like, you're going to run your own company, you never run anything. And, being able to do that. And I don't think it's because I'm particularly remarkable. I think it's just a lot of like just being tenacious and working hard and being okay to be embarrassed and to be stupid and to ask people for help and advice and then again ask them again for help and advice. So I hope that people look at my career not for awards and stuff, but just to be like, wow, she really had staying power. She had things that she wanted to do. She held herself to a level of quality that people recognized, and she kept doing it.
And diversity. I mean, I've watched you from Today to CNN to HBO Sports with Brian Gumbel. I'm like, wow, I want to be that Swiss Army knife kind of, journalist. That's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
looking forward, I know that you have already spoken about a few things that you have coming up. What stories feel most urgent to you right now that you believe are being underreported?
At this very moment, we're just working our way to getting as many people as possible to see our two docs, The Devil is Busy on HBO and Perfect Neighbor on Netflix, because this is the moment, the Oscars are on March 15th. So we're kind of in the countdown mode. And then I think there's so many stories, it's a really difficult time. So you've got to figure out how you're going to get funding for stories, anything that people think is DEI, which is stories about women and story about people of color. People don't want to do, but we have a lot of things cooking. And so, yeah, I'm really excited about it. We're going to go to the Oscars. I'm going to sleep for a week and then
Yes.
possibly a week and a half,
Yeah, I
and then we'll
understand.
start up again.
Well earned. This may seem like an epithet, but it's not. What I want to know is when audiences look at this chapter of your work, what do you hope they say you stood for?
I think I have consistently stood for telling the truth around challenging stories of policy and policy that impact people of color. I've never shied away from that. I've always been we did a doc about Rosa Parks, and I remember someone said to me,
The
there's never been a
Rebellious Life
doc,
of Rosa Parks. Yes.
right? And someone said, there's never been a doc about Rosa Parks. And I thought like, but thinking, I'm gonna have to Google that because I'm sure of course there has been, but there hadn't been. So I think my career at CNN, I think my whole career has been about trying to get in and tell stories that sort of, that most people don't necessarily know exist. I feel really proud that I've had a chance to do that. That's my sweet spot. That's what I like to be in.
Like I said, I could talk to you. Yes. 40 days, 40 nights. Did it rain, children? Didn't it rain? I would love it. Is there anything you wanted to cover that I may have neglected in our time together?
No, I so appreciate it. It's been interesting doing docs and doc shorts. They don't get a lot of love. They don't get a lot of attention. And so I often have to tell even my friends, like, go see The Devil is Busy. It's 30 minutes. It's really worth it. Because I think, that most people don't watch a lot of doc shorts and they'll watch movies or full-length films, but they don't necessarily watch doc shorts. So that has been our biggest challenge, is just to get people to see our projects.
Soledad O'Brien, lighthouse
Oh, thank you.
of
You're so kind.
journalism to us who are
Yeah.
navigating the dark waters, trying to avoid the coral reef and destroying our ships in the journalistic
Yeah,
world.
you're not kidding, huh?
No, I'm
Well,
very
thank you. You're too
serious.
kind. I'm very grateful.
I'm very serious about you. If I can ever support you in any way, thank you for giving me
Well,
the
thank you for
opportunity to
this
do it.
interview. I'm really grateful. I love talking about my projects and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. All right, Soledad O'Brien, 98th Academy Awards, two of them. Two of them. The Devil is Busy, streaming on HBO Max. The Perfect Neighbor, this one hit me. The subject matter hit me deeply. It's on Netflix. They're both nominated for Oscar awards. That's an Academy Award. I guess I got it right.
Yeah, same.
But
Yep.
anyway, and Soledad O'Brien, thank you so very
Thank
much.
you. Thank
Very
you. I
kind of you.
appreciate it. Nice
Till
to
next
chat with
time.
you.
Nice to chat
Take
with you.
care. Thanks again.
Bye bye.
Bye.
As an artist, we should reflect the time.
Why you so talented?
Cause I'm black.
Why you so amazing?
Cause I'm black.
Really important that we build characters so that people understand their story matters.
2 Chainz and I both are just really into good food.
And when you know you are royalty, you will only aim in life to beat royalty.
We're doing it right now. I don't give a damn what they say about me. Yes, I called your ass out. I know I shouldn't be saying this kind of.
Shout out the Hype Magazine Network.
Shout out to the Hype Magazine Network.
News from hip hop to Hollywood.